Historians have long noted that some of the greatest breakthroughs in human culture emerged not in times of plenty, but in times of scarcity. When resources were few, creativity sharpened, priorities crystallized, and entire philosophies of living were born. Yet today, surrounded by abundance, many of us feel poorer than ever, cluttered in mind, overwhelmed in spirit. The question is, how can scarcity, once a curse, become the doorway to abundance? This is where Microtopia Minimalism enters, a way of living that treats even the smallest space as an ecosystem of focus, balance, and intention. It is not about shrinking life, but about expanding meaning. In this video, we'll explore how shifting from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset doesn't require more possessions, but fewer, and how the careful design of a microtopia can turn limits into liberation. Stay with me, because the next few minutes may alter the way you see space, time, and even yourself. In every era of human history, scarcity has acted like an invisible architect, shaping the way people lived, built, and thought. When villages in the Mediterranean ran low on stone, they learned to build upward instead of outward, stacking their lives into vertical homes that maximized every inch. When ancient desert communities had only a trickle of water, they invented underground channels that carried that trickle further than anyone believed possible. Scarcity forced them to become deliberate, not by choice but by necessity, and what emerged was not just survival, it was ingenuity. Today, though we may not be running out of space or water in the same way, many of us carry the mindset of lack. We hoard, we cling, we clutter, believing more will shield us from the fear of not enough. But ironically, the more we surround ourselves with, the poorer we feel inside. This is where Microtopia Minimalism provides a startling reversal. It teaches us that abundance is not measured by what we collect, but by what we carefully design. A microtopia begins as a constraint, a small room or workspace, or even a single desk. But within those boundaries, scarcity becomes a lens. Every item must prove its worth. Every corner must speak with intention. In that process, we rediscover the clarity our ancestors found, that limits sharpen meaning. When you strip away what is non-essential, you do not shrink your world. You allow what remains to expand in significance. Think of a single clay cup in a sparse kitchen. In a cluttered house, it would disappear among dozens of mugs and glasses. But in a microtopia, that cup is no longer just an object. It becomes a daily ritual, a vessel of mindfulness, reminding its owner that even in scarcity, there is richness. Or consider a small window in a tiny room. In a mansion, one window is nothing. In a microtopia, it is everything. The frame through which light enters, seasons shift, and perspective changes. By seeing through less, you actually see more. What Microtopia Minimalism asks of us is to stop confusing abundance with excess. True abundance does not come from overflowing shelves or endless options. It comes from a deliberate environment that channels attention toward what nourishes you most. Scarcity, when reframed, becomes the architect of abundance. And as your space teaches you to live with less, your mind begins to expand beyond fear and into freedom. When your surroundings are stripped down to the essentials, something remarkable begins to happen. Attention, once scattered across 1,000 trivial details, gathers itself into a single stream. In our modern lives, this attention is often the rarest resource of all. We think of scarcity in terms of money or possessions, but the truest scarcity today is the ability to focus without interruption. A cluttered environment constantly fragments that focus. Every unused gadget on a desk, every pile of half-forgotten papers, every object that sits without purpose quietly drains us, reminding us of tasks left undone or decisions postponed. Microtopia Minimalism redefines this imbalance. By curating a smaller, intentional environment, we reclaim the abundance of attention. Within a microtopia, there are no silent thieves of focus. The few objects present are not distractions, but anchors, each one deliberately chosen to enrich rather than dilute. Imagine a workspace reduced to a clean surface, a single notebook, and a pen. What might seem bare at first slowly reveals itself as liberating. Without constant visual noise, the mind begins to work with deeper clarity, like a still pond reflecting the sky. History is filled with examples of this. Monastic traditions across cultures, whether in remote mountains or quiet cloisters, created microtopias centuries before the term existed. Their walls were bare, their possessions few, yet the depth of their insight and creativity still echoes today. They understood something we have forgotten. Abundance is not the presence of everything, but the presence of what truly matters. By narrowing the field of vision, they widened the capacity of the mind. In practical life, this shift is transformative. A room with fewer objects becomes a place where ideas can breathe. A desk cleared of clutter becomes a landscape for concentration. The scarcity of things creates the abundance of focus. And as the environment teaches the mind to hold its attention, it rewires our sense of worth. We begin to feel rich not because we own more, but because we can give our full presence to what matters, whether it's a project, a conversation, or a moment of stillness. This is the hidden promise of Microtopia Minimalism. By controlling the space, we do not merely design rooms. We design the quality of thought that will flow within them. And in that quality lies the first taste of true abundance, the abundance of undivided attention. If attention is the currency of the mind, then rhythm is the hidden wealth of daily life. In a world dominated by abundance of things, our days often fracture into irregular, chaotic patterns, rushing between tasks, drowning in interruptions, endlessly pulled by the next demand. This is the scarcity we rarely acknowledge, the scarcity of rhythm, of living at a pace that nourishes instead of exhausts. Step into a microtopia, however, and you notice that the architecture of simplicity creates an entirely new cadence. With fewer objects to maintain and fewer distractions to steal your time, your day begins to flow with a steadier pulse. You are no longer dragged in 100 directions. Instead, life begins to move with the elegance of repetition, meals taken with presence, work approached in focused intervals, rest embraced without guilt. Scarcity of clutter gives birth to abundance of rhythm. This is not a new discovery. Ancient farming societies lived in cycles, attuned to seasons, sunrise, and harvest. They possessed far less than we do today, but their lives moved in harmony with natural rhythms that gave meaning to their work and rest. Their scarcity of possessions made room for the abundance of flow. In contrast, our hyperabundant world fractures those rhythms. We binge, we rush, we overconsume, not because we lack, but because we no longer know how to pace ourselves. Microtopia Minimalism offers a return to that forgotten wealth. By reducing excess, it clears space for patterns that bring stability, morning rituals without screens, evenings uncluttered by noise, workspaces designed for concentrated cycles of creation. The abundance here is not in having more time. Every human has the same 24 hours, but in reclaiming how that time moves. A small space, when curated with care, becomes a metronome for the spirit, reminding you that life is not about racing toward more, but about moving in harmony with enough. And it is in this rhythm that true abundance is found, not in the frantic pursuit of endless options, but in the steady beat of a life intentionally lived, where each moment carries weight and each action flows into the next with purpose. Microtopia is not only a space, it is a tempo. And when your life moves to this rhythm, you realize abundance is not what fills your shelves, but what fills your hours. Every object, every habit, and every decision in our lives consumes more than just space. It consumes energy, focus, and intention. In our modern world, abundance often manifests as a labyrinth of options. Dozens of utensils in a drawer, countless tabs open on a computer, a wardrobe that overwhelms rather than serves. Each choice may seem small, but collectively, they fragment the mind and drain our capacity to act with clarity. Scarcity, paradoxically, is a liberator. It forces us to prioritize, to distinguish what is essential from what merely occupies space. Microtopia minimalism transforms this principle into practice. When a space is intentionally small, every item must earn its place. There is no room for excess or indecision. Each possession, each corner, becomes a conscious choice, a declaration of what matters most. Over time, this practice migrates beyond the walls of the home. The discipline cultivated in a microtopia informs decisions in work, relationships, and personal growth. By limiting the physical clutter, we cultivate the mental clarity to recognize abundance in opportunities that align with our purpose, rather than chasing superficial variety. History offers compelling precedents for this phenomenon. In Japanese tea houses, the sparse arrangement of utensils, scrolls, and tatami mats was never accidental. Each element existed to guide attention, to elevate the act of living into a ceremony. The scarcity of material complexity produced an abundance of perception, subtlety, and grace. Similarly, in early scientific laboratories, where instruments were few and space limited, discoveries emerged not from quantity, but from the precision and intention that scarcity demanded. In a modern microtopia, the same principle applies. Constraints amplify impact. A single desk light, a carefully placed chair, and a chosen plant are not just decor. They shape behavior, focus, and mindset. Each selection becomes a rehearsal in mindfulness, training the mind to recognize that abundance is not the sum of objects, but the quality of choices. Scarcity, in this sense, is the most fertile soil for abundance because it cultivates discernment, deep appreciation, and intentional action. When practiced consistently, microtopia minimalism transforms the way we perceive resources, turning apparent limitations into boundless potential. As the mind adapts to the careful curation of space, something extraordinary begins to unfold. We discover that abundance was never external, it has always been within. In a world of excess, we are trained to look outward for fulfillment, believing that happiness, creativity, or meaning comes from more possessions, more options, more consumption. But the practice of microtopia minimalism gently reverses this assumption. By intentionally reducing our surroundings, we uncover a reservoir of insight, resilience, and contentment that was previously obscured by clutter. Every pared-down corner, every purposeful object, every empty space becomes a mirror reflecting the wealth already present in thought, attention, and being. This internal treasury is cultivated slowly, like a forest growing over decades. The more we pare down, the more we notice patterns in our own behavior, preferences, and values. A single chair, a solitary lamp, or a neatly stacked notebook is no longer just an object. It is a teacher, a reminder of what we truly cherish. Scarcity in the external world sharpens the ability to recognize abundance internally. What was once hidden beneath layers of distraction, clarity, patience, creativity, and even joy emerges with remarkable intensity. Across cultures and centuries, wise observers have understood this principle. Ancient philosophers advised that simplicity was a path to freedom. Artists, scientists, and explorers often sought environments stripped of excess to allow the mind to expand. Microtopia minimalism embodies this same philosophy in a contemporary setting, proving that when life is carefully distilled, the richness of experience multiplies. The external scarcity imposed by a microtopia becomes an invitation to explore the internal abundance of perspective, emotional depth, and mindful engagement with the world. By the end of this transformation, scarcity no longer feels like deprivation. It becomes the crucible in which abundance is forged, a deliberate environment shaping habits, attention, rhythm, and choice. What begins as a minimalist space evolves into a sanctuary for the mind, a treasury for the spirit, and a laboratory for life. Microtopia minimalism shows us that by giving less to the outside world, we gain infinitely more within. As we step back from the quiet precision of a microtopia, it becomes clear that abundance is never a matter of quantity. It is the deliberate cultivation of what truly matters. Every pared-down space, Every intentional object and every moment of focused attention teaches us that less can be far richer than more. Scarcity, when embraced thoughtfully, transforms into clarity, presence, and the kind of freedom that cannot be measured in possessions alone. If this glimpse into Microtopia minimalism has sparked your curiosity, imagine what awaits in the rest of our channel, where every video and playlist is designed to guide you toward mindful living, intentional simplicity, and the abundance hidden within small, purposeful spaces. Explore, reflect, and let these ideas shape your environment, your mind, and your life. And if you haven't already, subscribe now to join a journey toward clarity, calm, and extraordinary focus. Because the path from scarcity to abundance begins not outside, but within.